Randy, we've got a problem.
What?
They go.
Reality's here. He's trying to crash the party. Reality? Who let him in?
You're sad that people are mean? Well, I'm sorry. The world isn't one big liberal arts college campus.
I don't have an agenda like I want people to do something. I need them to do something. I want them to avoid irrationality.
I guess what interests me is just like what interests everybody else. It's just sort of what feels real.
That was totally wicked!
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News in the Morning Time. Yeah, in the morning time, because occasionally from time to time, depending on what goes forward with our jobs here, it may be in the evening time, it may be in the afternoon time, it may be at supper time or breakfast time. You never really know what time Real News is coming, but any time Real News is on the docket, man, it's going to be a good time. We know that much. My name is Mr. Henry. David Shine Thompson sitting over there. Greatest audience in the nation appreciation here. Kelly's already saying, morning, Real News family. I really, really dislike living in the Twilight Zone. Can we get a refund on 2020? Can we get a 2020 refund? Hey, man, I'm telling you there. Can we get a 2020 refund? Shine, how you doing this morning, buddy?
Man, I'm doing okay. Yeah, 2020 is not working as advertised, okay? I just want to get my money back and get a new 2020. Can we do that? Can we just get a new 2020? That's what I would like.
New 2020. You see the show notes up here today, by the way. Tennessee officers make changes. We'll get to that second. Biden and Sanders are saying no to defund police. Now, that's with a bit of caveats. Ellen DeGeneres is getting a massive pushback. I'll bring up that Instagram post here in a little bit. And we have a couple updates on Seattle. Now, let me just do this. I'm putting Sean in the spot here. We were just talking for half an hour, and I didn't even bring this up. So he's bringing Mr. Henry, why are you doing this to me? He's really going to say, Grant, why are you asking me to do this right now?
Hey, Grant, why are you asking me this right now?
Thanks, buddy. Here's where I'm coming from this morning. In the comments section, or on this phone number. This is where Shine's saying, what are you doing to me right now? Or this phone number, 615-807-0619. That's 615-807-0619. If you want to call in and talk to us about anything, I mean, it's an open lines thing, sure. But if it's anything that we're missing, that we're not focusing on, if you just don't want to hear about this continuing, ongoing controversy, I get it. I'm there. There's a certain time period in life where I think you just need to let things breathe from time to time, marinate, simmer on it for a little bit, see how it synthesizes in the old gray matter up there and bring it back after the fact. If that's where you are, then by all means, you know what I mean? Let's talk about something different today. If you want to throw it in the comments section of Facebook, let us know where you're at. A totally different thing. We can talk about, I don't know, man. We'll talk about Bill Gates and that I don't know. What's the thing, Shine? The vaccine patent that he has, the 2020 666 thing. I don't know, man. Whatever.
Got me, bro.
Got me, bro.
You could say that evil thing that Bill Gates is doing, and that could probably cover it. But
there you go. There's some patent apparently that Bill Gates has with it, where the patent number is literally 202020060606, and with some letters attached to it or something. And Snopes actually did an update on it.
Really bad drug that you shouldn't take.
It does. Snopes actually did an update on it, man, and said it's a partially true story because it does. The patent number is real, and it is a patent number for a vaccine. Snopes says it just so happens that the patent number coincidentally fell on that number. Whatever. It is what it is. Go ahead, though, Sean. I cut you off. Sorry, man.
Oh, well. Yeah, there's a House bill with that number, too, that got a lot of press.
Yeah.
I don't really know, Grant. I've left it up to other real news experts to focus on the misdeeds and deeds of Mr. Bill Gates.
Of the Gates. Misdeeds and deeds of the Gates. So anyways, look, that's the call number. You see at the bottom of your screen right now. Shine, always on the ball, man. Throwing that graphic up there. 615-807-0619. If you want to call and talk about anything else, lend your opinion on anything we're talking about today, or if you just want to bring up a different topic of conversation, link some stuff in the show notes. We'll blow up the article and talk about it together. Greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment. Let us know what you're appreciative of, what you're struggling with right now, what you're working through on your end, what your conversations look like, man. Let us know what's going on in your community, what you need help with. If you have small businesses that are still trying to innovate, businesses that are opening back up that have some cool stories to tell about how they've been able to get through the hard times or something. What does your reopening look like? Any of that stuff in the comment section, let us know. And if you just want to stick to the topics at hand today, because you just want to work through some of this stuff with us, by all means, man, buckle in. We're down for the ride.
Buckle up, buckaroo.
Buckle up, buckaroo. Yeah, exactly. South Park, by the way, y'all. Man, some of those old things. I'm getting off topic a little bit, Shine, but man,
Hey, isn't TV awesome? Isn't TV fun?
I would advise everyone to go back and watch season 19, especially right now. That season 19 was released in the year 2015, circa 2015. And man, I'm telling you, it gets a few of these predictions, like, dare I say, spot on. Exactly correct.
Oh, yeah,
man. Anyways, first story of the day today. Here in Tennessee, police chief tells officers they now must intervene when others are abusing their authority. They now must intervene when others are abusing their authority. Now, importantly, I'm going to jump to the very end of the article and then come back to the very beginning of the article, only because certain of these policies that we're going to be bringing up have been implemented for 20 years and have been going on for 20 years. Actually, before I get to this local story here, Shine, sorry about that, man. I completely glossed over. There are some major updates I need to give as far as some of these bills we've been following. I don't know why I glossed over this so quickly. So a lot of these bills that we've been following, that we've been asking for your help on, a lot of the telemedicine stuff we've been asking for you guys to reach out to us for. Let us know if you're willing to make calls for us, if you know people in certain areas, if you're willing to take action.
The real stuff that's more than just complaining about stuff on the internet, like the real change that can happen in your life if you live in the state of Tennessee, and not all the theoretical arguing and bickering, like the real life. Yeah, that's what we're talking about right now.
All right, so a lot of those bills, civil asset forfeiture bills that we've been following, telemedicine bills that we've been following, a lot of those bills were up in the House Finance Committee yesterday. And fortunately or unfortunately, I would dare say unfortunately, depending on how you look at that, a lot of them were placed behind the budget. Now, for somebody that might know more what placed behind the budget means, I'm getting a call right now. I don't know, man. Let's just go to this. Let's see what happens.
Oh, man.
Hang on. Matt Burns. Hey, Matt Burns, are you on live with us? Real news, buddy. Are you here? Hey, Matt, dude, do me a favor here, man. We're programming live here, buddy. Do me a favor. I gotta bring your audio in. Give me about 2 to 3 minutes. Let me update everyone on this, what's going on by way of the state locally, and then I'll bring you on air with us. Does that sound good? That sounds good. We'll leave Matt on hold there in just a second. I'll bring him on air. All right, so quick updates. The bills we've been following, civil asset forfeiture, specifically HB 340 and HB 862. 340 was the bill that was going to remove what's called a surety bond. Now, in the state of Tennessee, we're one of only 3 states that requires this. So in civil asset forfeiture proceedings, meaning if the police officers were to seize your property, take your property, and forfeit it, meaning you lose control over it, in order to go to a civil court to get that property back, you have to put up a $350 surety bond, meaning you have to give $350 just to get your name on the docket to have your day in court, right? That was HB 340. It initially started with a bunch of other stuff, but that was placed behind the budget. Now, somebody in the comments section needs to chime up here and let me know what placed behind the budget means to you. All right, from what I've always understood, that the legislation being placed behind the budget essentially means when the House Budget Subcommittee places something behind the budget, it means that the panel plans to revisit that measure if any money is left after the state's spending plan is already set. So I don't know what that looks like for us going forward, but that's HB 340. HB 862 was Representative Lafferty's bill. That also pertains to civil asset forfeiture. And what this bill said, hey, if you're seizing my property and forfeiting it over here in civil court, I would really like to know how often over here in the criminal court you're also coupling that with a conviction. So basically, it's just, if you take my property, can you tell me how often that also results in you charging and convicting me with a crime? It's a super important stat to know, and one that I think everyone should basically probably say, why do we not already have that information being reported on? Well, people are gathering it. It's just not reporting. That was also placed behind the budget. Telemedicine, another one that we've been asking y'all every single morning for help with. We've been asking if you want to help us make phone calls on this stuff. We've been asking if you want to take action yourself to sign the petition that we link every single day. I've still included that link in the show notes this morning, along with the property tax issue going on. That was also placed behind the budget, as far as to the best of my knowledge. Now, this conversation about being placed behind the budget, I'll tell you right now, this is not a show on the behalf of Americans for Prosperity. We do not represent Americans for Prosperity in the show. This is just us doing this in our personal time. Nevertheless, I will follow up with some of our team members going forward and get a better indication as to the community we're building. How can y'all take action? What does this mean going forward for so many of the bills that have been so important to our lives here in Tennessee? And it's interesting to bring up here, man, one of the things I want to make a comment on that story that we were about to touch, and then I'll bring Matt on here in just a second, switch topics a little bit. But keep in mind, when we're talking about changing police authority, when we're talking about defunding or disbanding police, when we're talking about major reforms, civil asset forfeiture being one of them, qualified immunity being one of them, decreasing mandatory minimums like Representative Curcio's bill that we followed, that being one of them, right? Nice. Okay. Drug-free school. Yeah, there you go. Drug-free school zone report. All right, awesome. Sean just brought this to my attention. So what y'all looking at, drug-free school zone reform sponsored. Mike Bell just unanimously passed Tennessee Senate. That is awesome. Good government reform saved tens of millions. Now, that is good news, bro. What they mean is good government reform that saves millions from Tennessee tax dollars. So I believe the estimated savings on this bill was around 18 to 20 million. Now, that's on the marked low end. Now, obviously, if you don't understand what's going on with this bill, Sean, chime in here on the freedom part too, because that's what you picked up. Go ahead and
yeah. I mean, obviously, it saves people money, but it also keeps people from going to jail for stupid reasons and for a long time for stupid reasons. And that's a little more, in my opinion, applicable right now. That's what everyone's focused on. They're focused on like people going to jail and losing their freedom to make money or to build a family or to be a better part of their community than they were the day before. That's what the drug-free school zone reform is about. It's about actually moving the needle and removing barriers, stupid barriers that hurt people and take away their freedom.
Now that's why it was important, I think, to focus on the juxtaposition of how you and I took this, because I'm not trying to be too much of a cynic here, but I would think probably that one of the reasons, hey, pull that back up real quick, Simon. What did that say about the certificate of need? I would think that one of the reasons why the Senate focused on passing that is because they're focused heavily on budgetary issues right now. And anything that's going to save a dime or a dollar or put something back in the state budget is something they're going to be much more inclined to pass now as opposed to later. Now, that's the cynic's view, but let's be for real here. Unfortunately, Sean, you're exactly right. This should be an issue about, if you don't know what that bill does, by the way, it basically says if you're in a drug-free zone, which is a school zone or a public park or something, it's currently set at 1,000 feet. It minimizes that down to 500 feet. And it gives the judge far more discretion to take a case-by-case analysis and says, like, look, man, if you were found with a pinky fingernail size of cocaine in 972 feet within a school zone without school actually being in session, you're clearly not selling to kids. You probably shouldn't be sitting in jail for a minimum of 15 years. That's what that bill does. It lets the judge decide on a case-by-case basis. Certificate of need reform just passed Tennessee Legislature Senate. Awesome. Thank you to all the yes votes. Sponsors, too many. Man, I got to follow up on that. That's fantastic. Healthcare reimagined. Another thing going on right there. You'll see that link at the bottom of the show notes. Also, Americans for Prosperity, Healthcare Reimagined just launched this website today. Healthcare Reimagined. It's at the bottom of the show notes on the letter to legislators section. Great stuff happening. Some other stuff I need to get some follow-up information on as far as these other bills being placed behind the budget. But Sean, I do seriously appreciate you bringing that drug-free school zone to my attention. That is a massive, major win, regardless of the reasons why they put it through there, man. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Hey, you were just talking about the reasons it passed, and I think people need to know that that's what is getting passed right now, stuff that doesn't have a fiscal note attached or doesn't cost any extra money, or the things that there is priority for things that would save the state money. But what it does is remove barriers and make people more free. So, like, it's not like what you said wasn't unimportant or what I said was more important. Those are just two different aspects of the story, for sure.
Yeah,
and absolutely. I think it's great, especially considering some of the other news we saw from our legislator earlier this week. Just wanted people to know things that me and Grant work on are actually, like, we're actually trying to move the needle best we can, how we can in the state of Tennessee.
And that's one thing I was going to say, too, before I bring Matt on here in just a second. All right, so when we're talking about stories of defunding or disbanding police, and by we, that's a bad thing. I got a bad habit of doing that, whoever we is. When that conversation comes up, understand that the policing power, by way of the strictures, the structure of the Constitution, the policing power is left with the states. This is the reason why you have sanctuary cities. All right, so you can pass a federal law, that's fine. And you can use federal entity or federal agents to enforce that law, but you cannot force a state agency to enforce a federal law. That policing power is left with the state. This is why you can have sanctuary cities. If, I don't know, man, if INS wanted to go in there, or say that again, Sean? Yeah. If Department of Homeland Security wanted to go into these sanctuary city sites and start doing something, they could legally, but you can't force local people to do this. So when we're talking about these police stories, I just want to remind one more time, because we brought up all this local legislation, that much, if not all, of the proposed changes have to come locally, because the policing power is left with the state. You talk about issues. I saw issues brought up with, the police using tear gas, right? And how it's banned in the Geneva Convention, which is true, but still allowed to be used by officers during riot responses, which is also true. This decision is made at a state and local level. There's actually 4 states currently that do not allow tear gas to be used. Just remember, whatever happens at the federal level or whatever happens in Minneapolis, it will not change the law pertaining to the policing power of the state of Tennessee. That change must come by convincing your fellow man and changing our laws. I think Zig hit it on the head yesterday when we were talking to another AFP guy from Pennsylvania, saying, like, there's a lot of distraction going on right now. There's a lot of focusing on the squeaky wheel. Okay? There's a lot of attention being paid to the small fringe communities that are not necessarily going to make change where it matters to you the most. And I think that distraction is part of the plan. I think that separation and that division is part of the plan, when in actuality, what we should be focusing on is a lot of this stuff right here that could change the law directly in front of our face. Because, yeah, let's say that there's some, massive sweeping change at the national level. It's not going to change the policing power of the state of Tennessee. We realize that. Matt, let me go to you, man. I've been hanging you on the line here for quite some time. Sean, I'm going to take over the power here. Share my computer sound. Matt, buddy, thanks so much for calling into the program, buddy. It's one of our fantastic members. Matt from the Real News community. Thank you again for holding on, buddy. What's on your mind this morning?
Oh, man, good to hear your voice, Grant.
You too, buddy.
Yeah, and thank you, David, for inviting me back on. And, I could touch on a ton of this. I think me and you and Nick talked about this in 2016. Who is actually training the city police? If you want to get right down to it, the taxpayers are paying a UN group to train your police like you're living in an occupied zone. And now we wonder why we have all these issues. Well, and now they want the UN to come clean it up. Isn't that convenient? That's one. That's just one thing you're touching on. Follow the funding. We're paying people to train our police as if we're literally in an occupied situation. I don't think they understand what that does after 10 years of doing this in cities. You get all these issues and problems, and now, they want to call in the solution, don't they? Yeah, they want to call in the big bad boot, man. I don't think these kids understand what they're doing at all.
Matt, dude, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but bro, that's exactly.
They're here to bring in the nationalized police force, which is going to treat us like the SS. That's no joke. This is the big bad part of history, where you use these people to slip in the real power, and then they wipe those kids out immediately. It's history. Mao's revolution, he immediately wiped out the people that got him there. Stalin, he killed more communists than anybody else. And it's always the far left. These professors are playing a sticky game. These kids they brought in are playing a sticky game. What do you think all these camps are for? First I thought it was for us, but it's literally for the first wave of them. We'll come later, but that's just one point. Other than that, I didn't even want to get political with this stuff today. I wanted to touch on the main ingredient in Bill Gates' new vaccine.
Interesting. All right. Yeah, man. Dude, I said it. Why not? Go ahead. Yeah.
Dude, it's literally called luciferase. Luciferase.
Is that for real?
You can't make this. You can't make this crap up. You can pronounce it however you want, but if you can read that with a straight face and not think this is some nefarious. I mean, the dude, he's rubbing his thing all over our face, laughing at us. I'm sorry, but he is. Bill Gates is laughing about. Look at the grin on him when he's talking about all this.
Does that translate into Latin as the blood of the morning star or something like that?
I don't know what it is. I think it's a gift. Thank you, Bill. It's a gift. You are flat out showing us what clown world is.
If you type it into Google, it comes back as the generic term for the class of oxidative enzymes that produce, goodness, dude, I'm not going to probably pronounce these words, bioluminescence, and is usually distinguished from a photoprotein. The name was first used by, and it goes on to tell the name of who invented the words luciferin and luciferase. Goodness gracious. All right, go ahead.
Either way, but go ahead and say it. You can't know. I'm sorry. The patent 060606. Bill HB 666. Come on, people. I'm not saying it's evil, but I'm saying somebody is literally slapping you trying to show you something. I stopped thinking that these clowns were like horrible, evil people. They're literally putting on clown makeup, showing you, please look. There's something coming so bad. It's way worse than us clowns. So will you please look? I used to just wonder, hey, what are they pointing at? You know, I'm watching the finger. Hey, what are these clowns pointing at? Well, stop watching the finger and look at what they're pointing at. The big bad boot is coming.
Hey, Matt.
Unless you wake up. Like, Building 7, let me say it this way. Building 7 was a gift. Larry Silverstein was a gift. We were meant to see that. And we need to stop looking at the freaking finger and start looking at what old Larry was pointing at what's coming. They didn't show you Building 7 falling by an office fire. Funny how that information came out soon as the protest did as well. No, an office fire did not drop Building 7. That was a gift.
Now, let's see here. Let me just say one thing here real quick. Snopes does actually have an article dedicated to this particular thing. You can check that out for yourself. And there actually is a patent number indicating W020200606606A1. I'd end up, I don't know, go research some of that stuff for yourself. Matt, on the way out, buddy, let me ask you here real quick, man. As we get back to some of the topics du jour for today, this vaccine conversation is going to be one that's coming up in the fairly near future. Do you anticipate that being as heavy of a topic as it was in just the past couple of years, or do you think that we're going to have some sense of herd immunity before that vaccine topic brings back up again? You get what I'm saying?
Oh, they want the forced vaccination. They want the contact tracing, which will just be to track people. It has nothing to do with medical. This is giant. This is the biggest psyop magic spell I've ever seen in my life. It's amazing. And people just laid down, put on their slave mask, and got on their bellies.
Matt, buddy.
Like the snake cult.
Matt, buddy.
Bro, this is bigger than biblical. This is older than biblical. Time to look at what the clowns are pointing at and trying to show us, man, and stop saying these clowns are evil.
It is a clown show, man. I don't want to be a part of the circus anymore. I'll say that.
Hey, there's an ancient Chinese proverb.
But I want to see what the circus has been trying to show me.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, Matt, there's an ancient Chinese proverb of a man pointing. I don't think he can hear me, Grant, but that's okay. But I'll tell the audience.
No, he can't hear you. Yeah, Matt, sorry, buddy. Buddy, Matt, we'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks so much for calling in, man.
All right, thanks.
There's an ancient Chinese proverb, Grant, about a man pointing at the moon. And he was telling his students, he said, don't confuse me or my fingers with the moon. Don't confuse me with what I'm pointing at. And that may not make a lot of sense, but just let yourself sit on that for a while. Don't confuse what Matt was saying. He's like, I want to see what they're pointing at. I don't know either. I don't know what these people want. It just all feels a little weird, but I think what they're pointing at is not a weird, funny thing. It's probably a darker thing.
Well, and I'll tell you one more time, man. I hope one of the themes for today's show is that as much as we can focus on local solutions to whatever these national issues that are going on, I think it will also do a lot to say, give some people perspective as to where we're sitting, individually. Does that make sense, man? All right. Like I found myself yesterday getting caught up in a lot of the fervor and sort of the vitriol that was going around and exchanging sides. And I don't mean, I think I kind of lost sense for a little bit as to what I originally said is I think there's a lot of division going on right now. And I think now is the time to not just call for unity, but actually try and do something that will unify. I think that's what a lot of people are having a problem with too, man, is there's lip service going around on top of lip service. People are paying lip service to other people's posting lip service, right? a lot of it sort of feels fabricated and forced and a little bit of even coerced, man, where if you don't actually post something, silence is submission type thing in a weird way, right? So then you sort of have to be forced to do something, but no one could really feel like they're actually doing anything about it other than just like a virtue signal on top of a virtue signal. I'm telling you, man, getting involved in some local issues and trying to make actual local change will hopefully do something about it. Story at hand, Tennessee police chief tells officers that they must now intervene when others are abusing their authority. Police officers in Chattanooga, Tennessee have a duty to intervene when they see their colleagues acting unlawfully or inappropriately. Chattanooga Police Chief David Ruddy announced this update to the policy on Monday in his statement. It comes after weeks of the protest that we've all seen going on. Here's the statement that he said. Each department member has the individual responsibility to intervene and stop any other member from committing an unlawful or improper act, including but not limited to acts of brutality, abuses of process, abuses of authority, and any other criminal acts and major violations of department rules and procedures, the policy states. Successful intervention does not negate a duty to report. Failure to intervene will result in disciplinary action. He goes on to say, I've updated and highlighted existing policy to reflect not only the current expectations of our police department, but what I also know is in the hearts and characters of your officers. And again, I think we need to, as much as we can try to right now, I think we need to get out of the logical fallacies of making blanket statements. All right, I think we need to force ourselves to get out of the logical fallacies that a single occasion of something happening either in an institution or from a single individual now all of a sudden makes the entire thing about, like, I'll put it this way, okay? As much as the protesters hate being associated with the violence that's going on right now, I would venture to say, dare I say even, that the overwhelming majority of police officers hate that they are associated with some of the violence that's going on their end. Now, you've seen some of this stuff already. Now, there's some opinions out there that are maybe disagreeing with that. You'll see some stuff every now and then where, say, a person has violence enacted upon them, and then out of a sense of solidarity, like in Buffalo, we saw a bunch of those officers that, removed themselves from that same task force in solidarity with the officers. But for the most part, man, like, we know these people. We know these police officers. They go to church with us. This is what I'm saying. At a localized level, once we localize the solutions, they stop becoming these figures, like this monolith that we cannot take down. They stop becoming some monster that we had nothing to do with creating. I don't quite follow that logic train. If you understand them as like, dude, you live next to these people. Your kids go to church together. They go to school together. They play ball together. You can reach out and touch this person. You can have a conversation with them. I'm not sure at what point we lost that sense of like dehumanizing on both sides. You know these people. We can hold them accountable. In my opinion, this has always been, you restrict some of the legislation. You restrict the allowance that we've given to the police state. It's not like we didn't allow this to happen. And it's certainly not like it didn't happen overnight, but we created this problem. And I do use we in this sense very clearly here. Under a representative republic, we allowed it to get to this point. Actually, Daniel, the guy on Facebook here, sent us a fantastic article about this just yesterday. It chronicles the entire thing of how the U.S. got its police force. It has been a slow ramp, slow burn-up process over a very long period of time, but we allowed it to get here. We could claw that power back by holding people accountable, not just by way of legislation, but personally holding them accountable as well. Importantly, Chattanooga Police Officers Department's memo also goes on to say about the new duty, it notes intervening policy. Roddy also highlighted the department's existing policy that requires officers to warn suspects before the use of deadly force. And this is the current policy. This is what's currently law. This is how it currently operates. Quote, an officer, after giving verbal notice to the suspect of his or her identity as a police officer, may use or threaten to use force that is reasonably necessary to accomplish the arrest of an individual suspected of a crime or a criminal act who resists or flees from the arrest. An officer may use deadly force to effect an arrest only if all other reasonable means of apprehension have been exhausted or unavailable. And where feasible, the officer has given notice of such officer's identity as such and given a warning that deadly force may be used unless resistance or flight ceases. That is the current law on the books. My point is, if you don't like that current law, then let's change that current law. Understand Understand if and when we start having these kinds of conversations about pulling back the availability and the allowance for officers to use lethal force, which I have called for, I've advocated for, I've said, let's have that conversation. Understand once we start pulling back some of those allowances, there will be reactions, maybe even repercussions. We're going to have to take some of that responsibility back on ourselves as citizens. You get what I'm saying? And I'm not even advocating for legal self-help here. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying in this situation where we have a differential power situation, once you start to equalize that a little bit, by equalizing it, you're also going to have to take on responsibility, because without responsibility, there is no such thing as power. Power comes with responsibility, which is frankly why I don't take some of these kids that are going out doing some of the stuff right now, I don't take them too seriously from time to time because they don't want the responsibility that comes with some of that power. It has to be both and. Speaking about some of these kids that are doing some of this stuff right now, Shine, go ahead and pull up that next YouTube clip if you can. It's under the national stories. As we're pulling that up, I'll hit some of the comments here on Facebook, see everyone's at with at least this Tennessee-related story. Good thing, bad thing? How do you think we should go forward? This next YouTube clip is entitled Seattle. I don't know why I said it that way. Seattle under siege as protesters take over City Hall report. This video, Shine, by the way, and we're probably going to pause and stop and go back and forth. There's a couple different topics that are brought up here that really help centralize my theme for today's show, essentially being you have to localize this stuff. You have to start with the people you know. You have to enact change where you are, especially when it comes to the policing power. That stuff is not going to matter what happens in Minneapolis. It's not going to matter what happens at a federal level. Maybe by way of the general feeling. Maybe by way of, I don't know, man, some sense of emotion that comes with the Minneapolis did it. Wouldn't it be cool if we did it here? Yeah, but changing it at the federal level because it happens in 5 states over, it's not going to make a difference what happens in Tennessee where we live. And it doesn't matter wherever you're watching from. If you're not watching in Tennessee, if you're watching anywhere else in the world or wherever else, I can't say, but at least in the continental United States, the same thing applies. The policing power is left with the states. You got to change it where you are. Now, last couple of days here, I'll say this before I go into this clip here, man. Last couple of days, I've realized that I think I've been focusing too much on the fringes. I said yesterday's show was like, it was a weird one for me. I was working through a lot of stuff, man. Maybe a little bit sleep deprived. Maybe I'm going through some manic spins recently. I don't know. But I started to find myself just sort of catering to just some fringe competition. And the overwhelming majority of these people in this country are wanting, asking to have meaningful dialogue and discussion about the need to reform the police state. The overwhelming majority of the country, in actuality, is right where we've all been, where I've been for a very long time. What I've been asking everyone to say, can't we, wouldn't it be cool if we can have this conversation of like, I've been working with all these other organizations for such a long time. Americans for Prosperity was so great to bring me in and give me a paycheck to work with all these cool organizations like ACLU and NAACP and Equity Alliance and Young Republicans and in the legislature, all this stuff. Wouldn't it be cool if we were all here? Well, we are. We're already there. The vast majority of Americans are right there. That's the conversations that we're having that are taking place at the dinner table, that are taking place amongst friends and family and neighbors. That's what's happening. I just got distracted because I think the distraction is the purpose. I got distracted to focus on a few fringe things that were going on that was distracting the narrative. Biden and Sanders are they're pushing for reasonable change. They want increased funding. They don't want to defund the police officers. I don't even know if we should go that direction, but it's certainly not the direction of the fringe that I was focusing on. Biden and Sanders are both saying, no. We don't even need to disband. We don't need to defund. We need to go the other direction. I'm going to be less progressive about this thing than you guys ever realized. We need more funding. Moreover, I failed to realize how swiftly reality itself would dictate people's feelings on a lot of these topics. The Seattle situation is a good one, and a few other silver linings that I've picked up on. But Shine, go ahead and play that video. We'll stop and start and pause as we go through. Start it from the beginning there. We'll go ahead.
Breaking news correspondent Trace Gallagher on the protester takeover of a portion of an American city. Tonight at Seattle. Good evening, Trace.
Shannon, good evening. It's not a violent coup in downtown Seattle, but it could be emblematic of where the Democratic Party is heading. On Monday, police boarded up a downtown precinct, and since then, hundreds of protesters, reportedly from Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and others, have moved into the area, declaring it the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or CHAZ. And the protesters appear to be turning against their own, storming City Hall, demanding the resignation of Mayor Jenny Durkan. Unusual, since Durkan is a progressive who has long supported far-left issues. But this time the mayor is calling for police reform. The protesters want the police department abolished and won't budge. Of course, there are calls across the country for police departments to be defunded, but presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden does not feel that way. In fact, just the opposite. In a USA Today op-ed, the former vice president wrote, quoting here, "While I do not believe federal dollars should go to police departments violating people's rights or turning to violence as the first resort, I do not support defunding police. Instead, Biden supports giving more money to departments that are willing to implement reforms." Recently, Democratic Socialist Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez also came out in favor of defunding police, though her primary push still appears to be demilitarizing police. Watch.
We would not be giving local police departments who are undertrained a tank if we didn't give the military too much money to have extra damn tanks lying around to begin with.
And in an op-ed in the law enforcement publication Law Officer, a third-generation cop says there's no need to abolish police because they won't be around. Quoting again, "Cowards are all around us, from chiefs to sheriffs to politicians. No one has our back. I used to talk cops out of leaving the job. Now I'm encouraging them." And former New York City Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik says he's been told 600 NYPD officers are considering leaving. Did I mention that crime last week in Los Angeles was up 250% from the previous week? Shannon.
Hello and welcome to Fox News.
So Matt just said in Facebook here, the more people go along with the narrative, they continually have to vacate themselves for each new lie they're told to believe. After years of this, people no longer want to think or even in control of their own destiny, I think is something he was going to say there, but even control of their own. Eric said, so if they claim this is another country, can the U.S. officially declare war or send in Navy SEALs? I worry this is going to end very poorly, and in the end, make a bad case for voluntarism of any kind or secession. I understand where you're coming from, Eric. This is why I said a second ago, I think in a very strange sense, free market principles are going to dictate a lot of what's going to be happening over the next few weeks. You know, I think as much as we can, and by we, I do mean you and I and anybody else watching this right now, the community that we're building through both this program and the other stuff that Shine and I do for a daily living, the community we can hopefully build through this, as much as we can, stop focusing on the fringe. Stop focusing on the squeaky 5%. Stop giving the oil to that squeaky wheel. Localize the solutions. Localize it with your friends and families. Localize it with your neighbors. I think it will not just be a healthy thing to do. It will be the most pragmatic way to enact change that actually affects our lives. Now, this is a similar pitch you've heard from me in the past, but look at something like what's going on in Seattle. Someone might want to say, well, what do we do about that? I honestly, Shine, go ahead and pull up the next thing here. Apparently there's an update. Now, this update to this story is so ridiculous. No, it says, yeah, the food update. Yes, exactly. Yes, this is the fastest from zero to starving speed record Kami has ever achieved. This update to this story in Seattle is so ridiculous. I'm fairly certain. I'm actually teetering in the 80 to 90% certainty realm here that this tweet has got to be a troll. I mean, I honestly don't know if it is. I do know I tried to do some research. The guy, the tweet that you'll see on your screen here, I don't know either one of these accounts. I don't know the original account that took the screenshot, but I know the account of the screenshot itself. I tried to find that account, the Laura whatever. That account, it's a publicly locked account. I guess you have to follow the person. They have to accept the file. I don't know what it is, but I couldn't see.
I saw someone who had information on their Facebook page of this Laura COUC. She is an Antifa member, and she's 18 years old, and she's from the local area. That's all I know. That's all her Facebook page said.
I mean, read this stuff, though, man. And this is a little bit of what Eric's saying. Eric's saying, okay, so defund the police, man. If this is a bad example of voluntarism. What is going on here, man? You're telling me that there wasn't some coercive element involved here to take over 6 city blocks? I mean, goodness gracious, man. What kind of message is that presenting? The response is basically, okay, so here's the update, the alleged update. I don't know how you would follow up on something, but the alleged update of a person that apparently is living in this Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, the Chaz, because it is a bunch of Chads that might be living out there, but the Chaz, the homeless people that we invited took away all of the food in the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. We need more food to keep the area operational. Please, if possible, bring vegan meat substitutes. That's guys. That phrase right there. That's what I'm saying. This has to be a troll. Please. The tweet is a troll. They are fine on food. That's what someone, Adrian, said in Facebook. Yeah. Please bring vegan meat substitutes, fruits, oats, soy products, etc. Anything to help us eat. Now I will say, I think this is a funny way to look at the situation that's actually going on in the Seattle thing right now. The funny situation to look at what's actually going on in the Seattle thing right now is the actual thing that was just reported on the video that we just played. That being, if you do not live up completely to the threshold standards of what this particular group is calling for, they will excommunicate you. They literally took over City Hall and demanded the resignation of this mayor because she would not acquiesce to the full-on demands of defund the police. Now, the inherent problem with something as ambiguous as defund the police is what are you committing to? What is the end result? How much am I committing to as an elected official that represents more than just a few people in this room under a representative republic? What am I going to commit myself to if the mob comes screaming at me? You're not all the people. I don't even know how many of y'all live here. If I commit to myself right now to something as overly ambiguous as defund the police, what does that mean? Where does that stop? Does it jump into another industry? Does it just stay with the police? The story came out yesterday that there's not enough racial representation or there's not enough diversity in STEM. Do we jump into academics? How far are we jumping around with this thing? What have I actually committed myself to? Now, the point that I'm making here is that does not exactly seem like an organization or a list of demands it's not exactly inclusive. And aside from it not exactly being inclusive, it is so insanely rigid that it seems to be somewhat inherently self-refuting with the fact that they don't want to be rigid. They are somehow shirking off the rigidity of the system that they just left by replacing it with a far more rigid system than the one they just left.
Or authoritarian. You could replace rigid with authoritarian. They want to shirk off authoritarianism so they can be authoritarian in the zones they control. They don't not like authoritarianism. They just don't think the authoritarianism is the right kind. They want their kind of authoritarianism.
No, I think the point that Eric was making too, when he said that this might just be a bad example of voluntarism, I think that's right. If done properly, if a bunch of folks out there somewhere, man, I don't know, wanted to buy a bunch of land and just create a community for themselves, who would have a problem with that? And more importantly, more power to you, man. Please go off the grid, do your own thing, start your own community, do it the right way that is the literal definition of freedom. Please do that. But to use force to take over property from another individual and then call it your own, I don't see how you can get your head around the logic train that it needs to claim somehow that there's a consensus for doing this. Because there's certainly it's not a consensus for the leadership. And here's the other odd thing about that, of the clip we just watched. That leadership, the mayor that they asked to resign, she's the one that set up the situation by which these groups can thrive, not just exist, but thrive. Fully supportive of everything they've ever asked to do, fully supportive of any ideology that they've ever forced upon, or that this individual, that they've said, hey, would you support this particular type of ideology? One of the most progressive mayors in the state, let alone on the West Coast. But she's not good enough. She's not progressive enough. She's not going to be able to meet the standards. So who can meet those standards then? Oh, man, yeah, well, see, that's what, goodness, Sean just said, let's shift to the Bundy. So here's some of the follow-up. Here's some of the follow-up, the tweets that was coming in the same thread. If you read down a little bit more, the guy brings up somewhat of an interesting point as far as it pertaining to leftist response to right response. I mean, the response that I've had so far is if you just let the free market work itself out, I think it's going to prove the point to him. I think the leadership in the local area in a free market sense will think, I might have given y'all too much allowance. It's just not going to work. I'm sorry. Eventually, if you have to start, what is this little area going to do as far as it pertains to water or food or electricity or gas or anything else like this? I mean, they're going to have to be able to establish all that for themselves if it truly is a self-sufficient, self-reliant type of community. If it is one that is distinctly different than the rest of the United States, the free market will work those situations out for it because they cannot glob on and leech off the rest of the people surrounding them. It will not work that way. So that has been the right's response. At least I think that's my response so far. Now, this thread does bring up an interesting angle that it just caught my eye, and I don't know how the real news audience will feel about this, but you're seeing the tweet right now on your screen. Remember when the Bundys took over a wildlife refuge building out in the BFE, and all the blue check shrieked their heads off and that this was terrorism and called for an armed response. I wonder why they aren't characterizing a takeover of several city blocks that way. Odd, very odd.
Hey, Grant, something that I should point out in this tweet, people didn't call for an armed response. There was an armed response.
Yeah.
7 people, was 7, 4? Whatever. People died. And I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but there wasn't just a call for an armed response. There was an armed response, and people died.
I'll tell you, man, I don't know whether it's coincidence or I don't know what you want to call it. It doesn't necessarily matter, but we all do remember just a few months ago, or if not a month ago or something, the trending show on Netflix was Waco, right? I mean, I found that odd because you can go to the next tweet down there too, Shine, by the way. It's the next one there. It says, remember when the feds lured one of them out into an ambush and shot him to death? You don't have to show that rest of that because it uses a word that might not be great on the program, but whatever. But I tell you, man, it seems somewhat odd to me that Waco was the trending story on Netflix for a while, right? That's why I've always said, man, I think it might sound semantic to some, but I think if you focus on the overarching, slightly uncontrollable police power that is going on right now, that power differential, if you focus on that first, civil asset forfeiture, qualified immunity, war on drugs, if you focus on some of these issues first, let that tell the story of race. That will inevitably tell the racial component of that story. It doesn't need to be forced on the front end, because forcing it on the front end creates a divergence. It creates a dividing wedge. Whether it's reasonable or not, or justified or not, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. It just simply does. But we can all get behind statistics, man. Everybody knows the story of Waco. Everybody knows the story of Bundy's. Everybody knows the story that's been going on right now. Not everybody knows the story of using tear gas in, what was it, Philadelphia? See, I'm even blanking on the story of burning down a bunch of buildings. Not everybody knows every single one of those stories, but we can all recall stories of like, okay, this is a problem that we need to get handled under control. And that problem does have racial components to it, but focusing on the race first, I'm not sure, man. Yeah, go ahead, man. Yeah, I totally forgot the comments. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I just want to catch some, since we have some people on Twitch. What is this? Drayton LaFog. He says it does look like a troll tweet, but anyway, it's not like anything valid. Whoop-de-doo. Defund the police simply means divert some police money to communities, projects in poor black areas. The folks who don't want to dissolve the police are just angry. They need to come up with a valid alternative to taking care of crime. Another one. The people are claiming the property. They know that they don't have any property rights. It's just a way to get news attention. It's a small group of people. And then armed responses to protesting in our cities haven't exactly been working out. So even from this person's perspective, who seems to be pretty pro defund the police, even from their perspective, it doesn't actually mean defund the police. Well, even from no one's perspective, doesn't actually mean
exactly. Yes,
and I'm sorry, Twitch user, if you feel like I'm not stating your point correctly, but even you, who seems to be pretty pro defund the police, isn't actually saying get rid of all the funding. You're saying take some of the funding and put it into community spaces in, I assume you mean minority areas, not just black neighborhoods. I assume you mean or areas of lower socioeconomic class.
Yeah.
I assume that's what you mean, but I just thought that was interesting to point out. Even someone who seems to be pretty pro defund the police, it's just rhetorical. What they mean is take some of that money out and put it in other places. Because no reasonable person wants to live in a world without some kind of authority you can call when someone who's bigger than you, with a bigger stick than you or a bigger gun than you, is trying to take away your life or your property. Because nobody wants to live in a world like that. Or they can't even imagine it. They can't even, like, even someone who's super seems to be down for, and thank you so much for watching, by the way.
Yeah.
Dreck, whatever your name was. Dretton, appreciate you.
Yeah, and let me say that too. I want to second what Sean just said. If anybody's still watching on Twitch or YouTube or anywhere else we're watching, man, we got a lot of folks that come in here and check this channel out. And like, I seriously appreciate the diversity of this particular community that we're trying to build. Not just voicing opinions that are maybe alternate to what mines are, that hold us accountable, that let us think from a different side. I mean, goodness gracious, man, that's what this community is about. Again, if you're brand new, the motto of this program is to create a community by which we can have calm, cordial dialogue, that we can create disagreements and grow with one another, so that when we do have disagreements, it's amongst friends, not enemies. That is the motto, the mission statement of this community and this program that we're putting together. That is the purpose of why we do what we do. To the points a second ago, yeah, I think you're exactly right, Sean. And I think that person for Twitch is exactly right. Defund the police.
They just said, true, defund is a catchphrase. I'm not really decided on defunding. And then they said, yes, I did mean minorities, not just black people, which I think both those things are important to point out when you see the rhetoric. When you see the rhetoric on Facebook and Twitter, it doesn't say help poor communities. It says help black people. And like, yes, we need to help all people or whatever. But like, obviously, there are areas where there aren't that many black people, but there's still lots of poor people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those communities need help too. Like, I think we need to be more real with our rhetoric. We don't need to use catchphrases. We can say what we mean. So when other people hear it, they can respond to what we actually mean.
Yeah.
Not what we're signaling to. I don't know. But no, thank you so much for the comment. Appreciate it.
Again, that's the problem with the ambiguity. Let me use an example to show you the problem with the ambiguity of a phrase like defund the police, because you're exactly right. User from the Twitch person that's watching, 100% right. When defund the police almost never means just completely get rid of police departments. But Shine, I'll show two examples right now for what ends up happening with some of this stuff. Because of the ambiguity surrounding a phrase like disband or defund police departments, people just go to the logical conclusion of what those words mean. And we are in times right now, frankly speaking, where words that you use are very, very important, especially when they're left with this sort of amorphous understanding of like, well, how far do we go with that? Shine, skip down real quick if you can, man. It's underneath all that red stuff that I wrote that's underlined. It's underneath the story that says in the national story section, all that red little mamma nonsense. See the thing that says even Ellen isn't getting a pass? If Ellen can't sell something, then open up that Instagram link. Adrian just said in Facebook, I think he hits it here a little bit, right? Like, defund the police is a badly phrased slogan to describe a movement that has very good point. Yeah, I absolutely, totally agree. The police are involved in far more situations than they need to be. The result is way bigger and lower success rates than they should have. Absolutely, totally agree. I agree, he says, with those that are saying that it should not be the police who come when you call for wellness check or because someone is trying to commit a suicide. I agree with that too. I agree with all that. They are not trained for that. Dude, 100%. Everything Adrian just said is like right on. Right on. Defund the police, bad phrasing, bad slogan, doesn't work. It's not a good sell, and it's not a good look for anybody that's trying to push this right now. It's a phrase that it's describing a movement that the movement itself has a very good point, but they should have paused as far as a PR stance is concerned on this thing. He goes on to say, one of the points I really like here, it shouldn't be police officers that come for wellness checks or people that are trying to commit suicide. It should be individuals that are specifically trained for those wellness checks and specifically trained for mental health issues. Dude, 100%. I don't know who would disagree with that. That's fantastic. Look at Ellen, though. Ellen says defund the police, and you can scroll through some of this stuff, Sean. Eventually, what I'm going to focus on is the comments here. So I may be reading some that you're not showing. Just click on that little plus sign to pull up some different comments. But it says defund the police so black children can live long lives. Click on that little arrow, defund the police so that we can support mental health infrastructure. Defund the police so that we can end the criminalization of homelessness. Now, as you start clicking through these things, some of this stuff starts making a little bit more sense. Defund the police so that we can support those at the margin. Okay, all right. Start to understand what defund the police so we can lead with love. Defund the police so we can envision a world where we can have economy of care. Okay, so the further you go into the details, maybe starting to make a little bit more sense. But look at the reaction in the comments. This is Ellen, by the way. Ellen. I'll say her name again one more time, Ellen. The lady that can do no wrong by anybody's standards, Ellen. Shine, click on the plus sign one more time. Or frankly speaking, it probably doesn't matter which comments you're showing to them right now. The ones I'm seeing are saying, as a fellow gay woman, I'm so disappointed in your comments. I am positive if you were upstanding but lived in a high crime area, you'd be singing a different tune. One bad cop. Look at the different crime rates and cooperate with them. Another person says, terrible comment. Sincerely, a loving law enforcement family member who believes in equality. Thank you. You wanted to take my husband's job away, not the answer. Another comment here. I'm just reading these as these come along. Y'all are looking some different ones, I'm sure. This is a comment I'm reading. It says, I can't believe you posted this, Ellen, as one of your biggest UK fans, someone that truly believes in your be kind mantra. This makes no sense. If you defund the police, you'll get poorly trained officers that will make more mistakes, not less. Another comment, not your best post. I thought we didn't judge a group by the... This is what I'm saying, man. This is what you get out of the ambiguity of a phrase like defund the police. We need to localize. One more time, please hear me. We need to localize these solutions. We need to localize our conversations. You need to be talking to your friends and family. You need to be breaking that wall. Stop, increase the vulnerability. Stop with the facades. Stop wearing these veneers and these masks every single day. Open up with the people that you can actually have these conversations with. Because this defund the police rhetoric, it just doesn't work. People are becoming confused. This is fringe conversation here. I got caught up in it yesterday. This is the fringe conversation, and it only results in the comments that you're seeing right now. And I'm sure every single one of you watching this program on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook are all thinking the exact same thing. Well, that's not what the movement's about. We just said that it has nothing to do with this. It has nothing. They're getting it wrong. Does it matter? Does it matter if they're getting it wrong? I ask that sincerely. Does it matter if they're getting the nuance of this wrong? Because if one side is unwilling to start with a nuanced conversation that takes time to deliver, that takes time to properly articulate, that takes time to get the right people together under the right circumstances and calmly talk about these things. If one side is unwilling to properly deliver that message, can you blame the free market response for some of this stuff happening right now?
Hey, Grant,
I think the logic would say no.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let me throw in something that I think is interesting that I just got from that same Twitch commenter. Let me read this from Dretton LaFog. My solution, or at least partial solution, would have a new community force, the PPC, the People's Protection Corps. Now, for some of my friends, and I'll count you as a friend, Twitch guy, you know, we can be friends. We say on the show, real news, real friends. We can be friends. I don't care what you believe. We can be friends. I'm going to help out my friends on the left who've been pushing for gun control for 40 years, who are just now entering the fray of self-responsibility and community protection or individual protection. Us on the right have been developing language that doesn't scare people in order to achieve that goal for many, many years. But let me give you some advice. As someone who's grown up on the right, watched right-leaning, TV shows and heard all this phrasing for years. If you want to talk about personal protection and organizing groups that are not police that protect your property or your community, you don't want to use scary sounding language to do so. You don't want to use words that scare people when you're talking about forming, and let's be real about what he's calling for here, an armed militia. When you're calling for an armed militia, you want to use snuggly sounding words. You don't want to call it the People's Corpse. That sounds bad, the People's Corpse. But you don't want to call it something that sounds like the Soviet Union, which reminds people of death, to the tune of 80 million people, or the People's Republic of China, which killed around 80 million people with the Iron Rice Bowl, and still have mobile death vans. You don't want to remind people of those things. Even if you are being a Marxist about it, you want to do things like call it a neighborhood watch. Maybe we should have a more serious neighborhood watch. That's something that other people that disagree with you might be okay with. But if you put in your name the People's Protection Corps, that means it's only for a certain ideology and not for everyone in your neighborhood. So let me just help out some of the people who have not been advocating for personal responsibility in the realm of protection. Stop using Marxist words when that's not really what you mean. You're just kind of signaling to people. Use words that can actually get your point across and win over people who don't think like you. And this is seriously, I'm trying to give you some advice because we've been trying to figure out words to make self-protection sound less dangerous for 40 years. And maybe you're just new at it. Maybe you're just coming around to, I deserve to be able to protect myself. I have a responsibility to protect my neighborhood. But man, when you start using those Marxist sounding words, it scares people and it's going to make it not happen. So that's just some of my advice. Is that weird, Grant? I don't know. I have a theory that there's people that are entering a new world of politics they've never been in before, and they're using extreme language because it feels extreme to them. And I think it may even be cathartic to help them move into that space because they felt like it was extreme for someone to own a gun a month ago. Now they're talking about a bunch of people owning guns and patrolling neighborhoods. It feels extreme to them, but it's not that extreme, and you don't have to use extreme language.
Daniel said in Facebook over here too, I believe we should get rid of the police altogether, but having people on the extremes makes getting something effective more likely. Eric said there are plenty of people who want to get rid of the police altogether. In fact, that was the initial conversation in Minnesota, was it not? Kelly said, fact, you are 100% you are 100% of the time. You are your own security always. Adrian said, part of the problem is there is no organization. That's a major problem, right? Well, there is, but it's just disjointed. I think there's organization at the top, but it becomes very, very disconnected once the organizational structure actually becomes delivered on a message. And I'll prove that point here in just a second. Adrian said, part of the problem is that there is no organization in this. It was a reaction to the problem hitting a boiling point. Yeah, valid. And then further, when the police brutality video showed us how bad it has gotten, now there's the people are angry and confused, and we don't have an MLK or other leader to rally behind. Man, all those were just great points there. That's very true. Everything hit a boiling point, and nobody really has any sense of consensus or just one figure to be able to carry this tune, to be able to make sense of all of it, to be able to put it in a nice, cohesive, coherent package to say, like, you don't really mean defund the police. Like, no one is, first of all, Eric is correct. There has been multiple conversations, especially in Minnesota, when they're talking about defund the police, of just like stopping it altogether, getting rid of it entirely. But I think...
But none of the stakeholders that matter, except for the city council in Minnesota, are the only well-known politicians in America that have considered this, that have really considered it as a body anyway.
And Sean, go ahead and just to drive that point home too. There's two links that I've included in there. One is Sanders says, I do not agree with push to abolish police departments. And Joe Biden is also now saying that he doesn't want to defund him. He actually wants to raise the funding at a federal level by $300 million. Right. And I think what we're talking about here is the mislabeling of the defund police movement sometimes can not just have unintended consequences, but it can actually have the opposite effect of what people desire. So think about it for issues that are entirely unrelated to this defund the police thing. Think about it this way, okay? So at Americans for Prosperity, company that Sean and I work, again, hard line delineation. This is a program we do by ourselves. In legal sense, we do not represent anybody else other than just our own personal opinions. This company we work for, though, we do not think that people should be bailed out. We think that people should be responsible for their own decisions. We think that people tend to live their best lives when government just gets out of the way and lets you do you. In a very general sense, unless and until you doing you encroaches upon me doing me, we don't have a problem. I don't care what you do, man. Live your own life. Figure it out for yourself. That's freedom. So we had this situation going on a while back where, because of the terrible spending habits of certain cities in the past, when coronavirus and the economic shutdown hit, they had a bunch of unpaid liabilities that was causing them to run a train of budget deficits that were turning very, very problematic. And the threat that was given, particularly by Governor Newsom out in California, but a few other governors as well, the threat was, if we do not receive federal funding, we're going to have to cut our police departments. This is what I'm talking about. So now the unintended consequence of a movement like defund the police has completely destroyed the narrative of the need for the federal government to bail out states through the threat of if Governor Newsom comes out and says, like, listen, I got to get rid of our police departments, I'll say it this way. Let me repeat all this, what I just said. The threat issued by some state governors that they will have to immediately fire police officers if their states do not receive bailout funding from the federal government has been negated. Defund the police is now the rallying cry. It is what is being asked for by name. You cannot threaten a state's populace with something they are asking for, nor can you threaten the federal government lawmakers with something that it is asking for. You understand what I'm saying? This is one of the unintended consequences that has nothing to do with the original setup. Sean, let me know if I ever stop. It looks like we're back in. Another unintended consequence of all this stuff. Another unintended consequence of what's going to come out of this. And then we probably need to end the show here. It's getting a little bit late. Think about it this way, though. The coronavirus conversation is all but completely shut down. Now, you're seeing a little bit of this uptick conversation because Trump's talking about doing some of his rallies again. Now, all of a sudden, it's a topic du jour, and it's going to be a conversation again about whether we are or are not spreading coronavirus. Doesn't necessarily matter. But the argument has been for a while that, hey, listen, coronavirus, we're just not going to speak on it for a little while because the need for these protests is so severe right now. It's so needed. We have to get this message out. We have to be able to voice our opinion on this thing, that coronavirus needs to take a back seat for a little bit. Now, think about it this way. What has been called for almost as much as the defund the police stuff during these riots, during these marches? Vote. Get out and vote. So the protests themselves have made an issue of the need, the constitutional guarantee, the great franchise, representative republic, your representation in that representative republic. This very protest has called for the need to go vote. What does that do? Shoots right in the foot the need to have mail-in ballots. You don't need to have mail-in ballots, man. You were just marching 10,000 shoulder to shoulder in the middle of the streets for hours and hours and hours a day. You don't need to have a mail-in voting process right now. That entire narrative is negated. Do you see what I'm saying? Like some of these overarching narratives that do not take the time to properly articulate the nuance behind what the message needs to deliver will end up inevitably falling victim to some of these things here. Now we don't need mail-in ballots. Now we don't need to bail out states. Unless you're not really talking about defunding. What you're really talking about is allocating funding differently. That's what you're really talking about. It's not defund the police, but allocate funds differently so that we can focus on better issues or more problematic areas of society is a big old mouthful, and we don't want to take the time to say that. We don't want to take the time to sit down and have the conversation with someone. We don't want to take the time to let that deliver. So we're just going to go with this ambiguous deliverable message of defund the police when no one actually means defund the police. Do you understand my problem with that? And it doesn't even have to be my problem. It's not my problem. You're seeing the problem right now in front of you. We don't need mail-in ballots. We don't need to bail out states. Or so Fox News is going to tell you. Now, if you don't like that part, if that stings you, then that's free market, man. That is the free market analysis of reality coming back. And Shine, we'll hit some Facebook comments if you want to on the way out here, man. Then probably got to end the program. A couple different stories we didn't get to today. Obviously, like I said, coronavirus updates. Looks like we're top 2 million now. Some states are seeing surge in hospitalizations. Trump saying that he's going to resume some rallies. We have Biden with another gaffe saying that he wants a strong VP that's ready for president on day one. Yeah, you heard that right. Biden wants a strong VP that is ready for president on day one. NASCAR is talking about they're going to ban all Confederate flags at events and properties. Might bring that up tomorrow. Pretty interesting conversation there. Could be an interesting conversation of like what that means for, I don't know, the notion behind free speech or the notion behind the Confederate flag or for private corporations doing it. I mean, all that stuff that's going to come with it. Does anyone even care is my question. I mean, do we have any NASCAR fans that are watching this show? If you're not a NASCAR fan, do you care? I want to bring up all that stuff as well. Barr says that, quote, familiar names are going to be among the DOJ that you see the investigation in Durham. He's about to release some of this stuff. The findings that he says is very troubling. You're going to see some familiar names. Let me hit some Facebook comments here on the way out, though. Eric said, and that is being talked about enough. I think the Dems are wanting to keep this shutdown going to avoid debates for real. Interesting. Daniel says the states needed bailing out because the feds required that they fight an asinine war on drugs. Well, but that's what we talked about a second ago, Daniel. Like the federal government cannot require. Colorado's a perfect example of this, all right? The federal government cannot require that the state government enforce federal law. it's constitutionally restrictive. You can't do it. The policing power is left by way of the 10th Amendment. So says the Supreme Court. The policing power is still left with the states. So
just like roads and schools and other things like that.
I would retort back with, yeah, the states needed bailing out because the feds required them to fight an asinine war on drugs. I mean, yes, it just basically, I think what Daniel's saying is that it gave police powers yet one more tool in the bag to enforce federal violations where they may not have had that to otherwise. But that's still the state law deciding that they want to enforce that law. They didn't have to. I mean, Colorado has weed legalized and a bunch of other states do at recreational level, but it's still technically illegal at the federal level. They don't have to if they didn't want to, right? Adrian famously says, another problem on the other side of things is the concept of unlawful assembly. Good point. The police can label any group more than 3 people that they suspect may turn into a riot as unlawful assembly and break it up, giving them the ability to legally squash resistance. Again, it's part of the problem. What I was thinking of this perpetual back and forth that's going on right now is, as it violence begets violence, man, it's just going to turn into laws, giving police more allowance. But I don't know, man. The other side of this too is the other headline I just didn't touch today is that there's been a 250% uptick in violent crime in LA. I mean, a lot of these cops are just going to stop doing their jobs. They're just going to go home. They just don't want to deal with it.
They moved the National Guard into LA yesterday.
Did they really?
Yeah. Goodness.
Well, I don't know, man. I don't know. Again, I don't think anyone. I don't know. On the way out, let me ask: and this is going to sound, I don't know another way to say this without it sounding condescending or belittling. I'm not meaning to, but is anyone surprised by some of the upticks of this stuff? That sounds condescending, Shine, to you. I'm not trying to deliver it in the way. I'm honestly wondering.
I'll say it just as cynical. If you are surprised, then go read some history. When people start burning and breaking stuff, people are going to stop them, whether it's the state or otherwise. It's just I don't know. It's like 1 + 1 = 2, right?
No, right. I mean, that's at least the way I'm seeing it. I hope I'm not out in left field in this, but I would have to think, like we've said before, if you're talking about putting a syllogism together, A + B = C, if there's a power differential between police and the populace, and crime is somehow being stamped down by what we said was the power differential before, that somebody is out there trying to say, hey, you can't be doing crime. If you take that out, it creates an inevitable void or a vacuum. Now, somebody's going to have to take on the responsibility of filling that void or vacuum. And at least for the first little bit throughout all of human history, it tends to be a rise in crime before the populace itself takes that power back and that responsibility back as well. That's what I'm saying. I hope that's not offensive to say. I don't know. What I'm saying is it just seems to be the natural outcome that we're going to see more stories like this. We saw it in Chicago over May 30th weekend, the deadliest weekend in Chicago history, 250% increase in homicides in LA.
And that's saying something. That's like saying Deion Sanders had the best game he ever played, or something like that. I hate to say it like that, but when Chicago has its worst murder weekend, that's got to be one of the worst murder weekends in any city anywhere because of how bad their normal numbers are.
Right. And it's not an opinion. That's what I'm saying. I don't think Shannon and I are even trying to espouse opinions right now. I think all we're saying is when we've asked police to stop doing their jobs and police are quitting their jobs, well, who's left to stop the bad people doing bad things? It's just us. It's just us. And if we're not going to do it, then bad people are going to do bad things. I don't know, man. That's just basic definition of evil is all that is. Anyways, last comment here. Adrian says, on the way out, there are so many angry and passionate people gathering together, and a rise in crime is inevitable. Yeah, okay, there you go. The police are making it worse, not better, in my opinion. Also opportunists. There you go. All right. Hey,
Grant, let me just read a couple YouTube comments. Zach from YouTube says, and this is way back when we were talking about the organized groups helping the police or working with the police or communities. He said, PCP, people carrying projectiles, LCD, leaving centralized design, and Dretton Fogg from Twitch wanted us to make sure that he says, I'm not talking about a militia. I don't want these people to be armed, but I do want a professional force that works with police forces, maybe add an extra person to the car or whatever. But I'll say this, I'm worried about that force if they're ideologically driven and not rule of law driven. If they're going around knocking on people's doors because of what they say on Facebook or Twitter or from what someone heard them say at work or something like that, I'm not for a force like that. I'm not for a ideological force, just like I wouldn't want a bunch of, Christian zealots riding around with cops enforcing moral law. I wouldn't want that. So as long as these people are actually there to help the rule of law, maybe help people with mental disabilities, those kinds of skill sets that police don't traditionally have, but maybe we need, in our police systems, like I'm all for that, as long as it's not ideologically driven. As long as it's not the woke church joining up with the police, I'm totally cool with that. Like, totally cool. As long as the police can keep those people safe also, because we don't need talented people going off with police to walk in a door first and then get shot by a crazy person or beat in the face by a crazy. So there's a lot of things to work out, and we'll probably fail a lot more before we succeed, because that's the way things seem to go when you're doing new things.
Absolutely. But again, man, I'm just so happy. And I think the comments in Facebook, man, the comments in Twitch especially, man, I'm loving the Twitch comments, man. That's a totally different demographic that we've not been able to touch before. Y'all been awesome this morning. Comments over there on YouTube as well, really, really helped too. It's been super encouraging. Yesterday was a very discouraging, disheartening show for me. I think I just let myself get wrapped up too much. But this morning, man, has really just helped me understand, like, dude, everybody, the vast majority of people are in a spot right now where they're wanting to have those serious conversations of proposing ideas like is being discussed right now. And the vast majority of the people are not in those fringe communities that I've been focusing on for such a long time. It's not healthy to stay there. It's not healthy to be there. So all that being said, I seriously appreciate y'all doing what you're doing with this community. I seriously appreciate y'all's comments. I seriously appreciate y'all, man, being willing to have those conversations and work towards something that's going to be better for all of us. Whatever legacy we're leaving to our children and grandchildren, man, that's what it's about. Solving generational problems, right? So that families do not have to inherit the sins of their fathers. That's what the entire thing is about for me. You do this a couple times right, man. I'm telling you, that's how you solve everything. You fix it 1 and 2 generations, and man, it's a brand new landscape, brand new trajectory for all this stuff. You couple that trajectory, getting a little bit of economics here, man. You couple that trajectory of getting some of the societal stuff correct with the fact that we actually have the only real purchasing power by way of the number of individuals that can buy things left in the developed world. That's, dude, like we're cruising. We're good. We got it, man. We can figure out some of this stuff, how to coexist with each other and speak peaceably amongst one another and actually solve some of these issues by not focusing on the fringe. Couple that with the fact that we're the only developed nation in the world that has enough people to buy stuff. Now you got a good economy and people getting along, right? It's a little bit idealistic, but it is what it is. Shime, go ahead and take us out here for today, man. I can't hear the sound, but I think we're good to go on that. Getting out, yeah.